I'm Dr. Jana Houser. I teach about the weather. My expertise is studying tornadoes and especially the processes that are occurring while they form. I use specialized high-resolution radar data to answer questions such as when and why does a storm produce a tornado? I'm going to talk to you today about the movie Twisters.
From the Tornado Tamer Project is out in the field, about to chase a storm southwest of us. Our experiment is designed to decrease the moisture inside of a tornado to see if we can make it collapse.
Tell the folks how you do that, Kate.
Well, first we gotta find a tornado to suck up our super absorbent polymers in these barrels.
Diapers. Tell them it's the same stuff they use in diapers.
Oh yeah.
The average thunderstorm contains 5 times 10 to the 8th kilograms of water vapor. So that is a lot. The theory behind this, that we're going to suck out all of that water, is perhaps maybe feasible. But the problem with this is that it requires way more material than is physically and logistically possible.
Oh, the wind shear is strong.
Got some serious energy building in there. Woo!
So the thing that's referenced here that's important is wind shear. So traditionally in the US, you have winds at the surface that come out of the southeast, and then they kind of change direction, almost like hands of a clock, as you go upward in the atmosphere, and then they become more westerly. So it's the combination of that change in wind direction coupled with winds increasing in speed as you go up that provide the necessary conditions for storms to begin to rotate. And those rotating storms themselves are ultimately what provide the additional requirements and ingredients for tornadoes to occur. So we need this proper amount of ingredients, both the instability and the wind shear. Kind of like today, when I look at the models and I look outside, it's looking a little interesting. We're gonna have to keep an eye on that. By the way, this photo in here, I was part of the crew that actually took that footage.
Let's say this is a tornado, right? Team drives up, we place a portable par here. It's giving me incredible high-resolution images, but they're still kind of flat. So what do? My team sets up 2 more, here and here. Now we have
A 3-dimensional scan.
the most perfect scan of a tornado ever.
This is a real legit science methodology that is very exciting and very relevant to the field. Phased array radars can scan a storm and look at the precipitation inside. They can look at the air distribution inside. Phased array can acquire data so much faster. You can get a 3-dimensional picture of the storm in roughly 2 seconds compared to what it would take a regular radar about 2 minutes to look at the same volume. The challenge is that to get 3 of these instruments in a proper place to scan the tornado at the right time is very, very logistically challenging. We have to get these things in the position that's proper in order to triangulate and 3-dimensionally calculate the wind field. However, if/maybe when, we are successful in doing this, the high temporal and spatial evolution that we can achieve with these radars could potentially be very informative to helping us understand how tornadoes form, why they form, and how they behave on very short timescales.
So we want a 3D scan of the entire area around the vortex, which means we're gonna surround it with 3 radars, each one pointed at the tornado.
What Javi doesn't mention in this clip that he does mention a little later in the movie is that they have to be within 300 meters of the tornado. To get that close to the tornado, to drop your instrument and to get out in time is very unrealistic, unsafe, and scientifically pretty much invaluable. Ideally, what we want to do is position ourselves in a location that's several miles away from the storm initially, collect the data as it's approaching us, and then as it's passing as well, so that we might have 10 to 15 minutes of continuous data collection at ranges from maybe 2 to 4 miles or so. This is supposed to be Kate looking at a tornado using a radar software that shows storms. The problem with this is that is not a storm. I don't know what she's looking at actually. So not only is there not a tornado, but there's not even rain in this image. So there's pieces of truth in what's being represented here. A phased array antenna is basically typically a square like what we're seeing on the camera here. And it's comprised of very small mini antennas, which is what we're seeing represented by all of those individual little squares that are lighting up here. Those tiny little antennae act independently but can be steered collectively, which allows for the very rapid data acquisition that distinguishes these phased arrays from traditional antennas. So in reality, this thing is going to just look flat and black, and we're not going to see any kind of cool effects. Obviously, it's Hollywood, so they're going to enhance the reality a little bit. But if you ever see a flat, square thing on the back of a truck that's shooting towards a storm, it's actually collecting data. And we're back to Tyler and his crew. They're having some fun out there. They're basically trying to get inside a tornado, which is never a good idea. Here we go. Here's the fireworks. But even if you were able to deploy fireworks inside a tornado, it's unlikely that it would show that beautiful visual imagery that we're just seeing there, because there's just too much rain and clouds, and it's going to obscure the light unless it's a very specific kind of lower precipitation tornado. And in that case, maybe you see something fun, but you still have to risk being run over by 100-mile-per-hour winds.
EF1 or EF5 tornado rating. It's not based on size or wind speed. Power we ascribe to it. It's based on damage.
Based on damage, he says, and that's 100% true. If you have two of the exact same tornadoes and one happens in a field and one goes through a neighborhood, the one that goes through the neighborhood is going to have a higher EF scale value than the one that goes through the field, even if their wind fields internally are completely identical. And all of this stuff is in this handwritten notebook that actually was made by meteorology students at the University of Oklahoma. So they pulled together real information from their classes and compiled it into this notebook. So it's a kind of cool personal effect here that's incorporated into this scene. It's the climax of the whole movie. There's this giant supercell, which is the type of storm that rotates and forms most of the violent tornadoes that exist. It's gonna hit this town of El Reno, Oklahoma. Several very high impact tornadoes have occurred in and on the periphery of El Reno. One tornado happened in 2011 that was rated an EF5, and it had winds of roughly 306 miles per hour. 2 years later, in 2013, another incredibly high impact tornado happened just to the south of El Reno. Thankfully, it didn't make it into El Reno, but the tornado itself was the widest ever recorded. I actually was in the radar truck that measured the wind speeds and confirmed the width of that tornado. It was 2.6 miles wide. Had it gone through the town of El Reno and not dissipated, it would have basically wiped the whole town off the map. So we see this little water tower that says El Reno there. There's actually cultural significance to where they're doing this in the movie. We're starting to see the building crumble. We're seeing the roof fall apart. Just like what happened here. I'm looking out at a tornado that is probably at least 3/4 of a mile away from me. We don't see debris being ingested into the tornado at that great of a distance, at least not that much. So they're looking for a basement, and this is good. Given the opportunity, you always want to get to that underground shelter because the winds from the tornado can't penetrate below the surface of the ground. But if you don't have a basement, the best place to be is in a small interior room that doesn't have any windows, so a small interior bathroom or closet. The idea is to put as much space between you and the exterior of the building as possible, because what ends up hurting people is flying debris. So we're looking at roughly 39 50-gallon buckets or barrels worth of the sodium polyacrylate here. While this absorbent material is capable of sucking up 100 to 1,000 times its physical weight, we have way too much weight in the actual thunderstorm to make a small amount like this actually work. In reality, for an average storm, we would need to have about 11 full tractor trailers worth of this material to potentially make this actually work and absorb the water. And the storm that I'm looking at right now doesn't look to be like your average storm. It's bigger, it's got more condensation, more moisture, so we could maybe think we might need 2 times that amount to make it actually work. So right here what Kate's doing is she's deploying silver iodide into the storm. What that does is it converts water vapor, which is the gaseous form of water, into a physical liquid, so it causes it to condense. And once it condenses, then these absorbent polymers can actually suck it up out of the atmosphere. Now we're releasing our absorbent material into the tornado, hoping that all of the liquid water in the tornado and the storm above gets absorbed into those polymers. We still see the tornado off in the background. The reality of this is that if people are being sucked up by the tornado is literally on top of them at that moment. All right, now this is a cool shot. I gotta say, like, Hollywood has some props here in the sense that those clouds look very real to me, and that CGI is excellent. We are seeing what we're supposed to believe is the storm falling in on itself. So while we're seeing this sort of plunging effect happen, the reality of even if we magically absorbed all that water, it's going to behave a little bit differently from what we're seeing there. Evaporated means that it's drying up, but here we're just sucking it out like a sponge. Wait for it. Oh man, the tornado just vanishes. Just like that. So we're supposed to believe here that the absorbance of all of that water makes the tornado all of a sudden go away. But really what's driving the tornado is pressure differences between the internal part of the tornado and that swirling air and the exterior. The rain and the clouds and the moisture content is really kind of a separate process from that pressure difference in the first place. So even hypothetically speaking, if we were to absorb all the water, that doesn't necessarily mean that we're substantially altering the physical pressure and temperature of that internal storm. So does this actually work in theory? I don't know. So that's it. That takes us through Twisters. Hopefully I didn't just ruin the movie for you. Now, I have a date to go visit my friends in Oz. See you later.